Oh, snap. We ready to rock. What's up, Degen family? It's the Degenation Podcast coming back at you for week one in the week one Draftkings breakdown. Woo, we're so happy to be here. Football is back. I'm your host, Ryan Alexander _W, and I'm joined by my usual co-host, Mr. Kevin Steele himself, aka Fantasy Wrath 13, aka KC Baby. And we're joined by if you missed the podcast 2 weeks ago, then you know this guy's going to be a regular host with us on the podcast this year. Degenation family, it's Maddie Dickinson at Maddie DFS. Maddie, we're happy to have you back again. You're in the drive seat with us for all 16 weeks, including playoffs, buddy. How we doing?
Doing good, man. Can't believe week one's finally here. Ready to fire this ship up and get rolling.
Yeah, man, we got a lot to talk about, a lot to break down. And of course, Kevin already stepped away to get himself some water because you know he's going to be spitting some fire takes, and I can't wait to just get at his head for him. But for those of you guys who are listening to us on the stream that could be watching on YouTube, Periscope, what have you guys, make sure you're subscribed to the TFA channel there on YouTube. You can look right there at the bottom screen. You just subscribe there. It's very simple. Good content that's coming out, guys, especially from the Redraft family. The Fantasy Authority pod has been killing it already with the start sit video. That's been live. They got waiver wire pickups for you. There's going to be content coming at you all year, guys. FantasyAuthority.com is where you need to be, and subscribing to our YouTube channel, The Fantasy Authority. And if you're listening to this podcast, if you're getting this sweet goodness in your ears, that means you're listening on your podcasting software, whether it be Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, even on the site itself. And guys, on Apple Podcasts, I'm looking at the reviews, and thank you to my boy Lewis right here. He's subscribed, or he's already made a comment, gave us some stars there. Lewis J21, I appreciate you, dude. Lewis, if you reach out to me on Twitter, that's Ryan Alexander _W. I'm gonna send you $5, however you like it, PayPal, Venmo, to use in DFS, whatever DFS site you want to. And that goes for first people that I see that leave us a rating, leave us a 5-star rating, and send us a comment as well. I'm going to send $5 your way to the first 10 people that do that, just to start off the season right, Maddie, because, you know, we're getting back into the DFS grind, and people are hungry for it. People are ready to get these lineups up. People are ready to test their redraft strategies into DFS family. And it's going to be a crazy week one, as we have seen the scope kind of lay itself out with injuries, with depth charts being released. How excited are you, dude, to get ready for this?
I'm excited, man. We kind of talked pre-show. We've seen a lot of talk on Twitter over the last week or so about all these depth charts and who's listed where, whether it matters or not. And I'm just ready to get it rolling. I'm ready to get back into the DFS swing of things and get out of the grind of season long.
Absolutely, man. And you know what? While we're waiting on Kevin to get back, I just want to kind of talk about just the overall view of the slate. You know, we touched on it when we came back about 2 weeks ago, just about overall strategies of the slate, kind of what we were looking at, what we were targeting, pretty much across the board. We were all kind of looking at the Philadelphia situation there with Jalen Reagor, his price coming in at only, I believe, 4,300 on DraftKings. He is now going to be missing that game. Looks like Desean Jackson chalk week. We got a couple chalk running backs that we're going to talk about. But how are you just feeling about this overall slate and where you're going to be finding yourself leaning towards in certain situations? Are you looking in on players? Are you looking in on game scripts more so, trying to predict there? Where are you starting at, Maddie?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on it 2 weeks ago. I mean, trying to predict in week one the amount of volume that you can predict, you know, comfortably. Like, because there's going to be a lot of unknowns, like especially with the rookies. You got the guys like Jonathan Taylor who are going to possibly split with Marlon Mack. You just don't know how many carries are going to come there, despite being in a really good matchup with Jacksonville. So for me, it's always about targeting game environments, but also at the same time getting those, you know, those top end players and offenses, whether they're good or bad offenses, that are going to, you know, garner a lot of the targets or get a lot of the rushing volume. So guys like, you know, Terry McLaurin, the Redskins Washington football team is not a not a good offense in general. But I mean, you get a guy like McLaurin who's going to hog 25 to 30% of the targets on a weekly basis. That's a guy when he's priced a little bit lower, which he is this week. That's a guy you can look at to kind of fill out your lineups, despite it maybe not being a game that you might not want to target. So. That's just an example, that kind of is a good game to target, but that's just an example of, a guy on a bad offense that you may want to look to prioritize,
Yeah, absolutely, Maddie. I definitely hear you there. And, we talked about it in the last podcast as well, too, of just kind of being smart with your exposures and everything as we get into week one, because a lot of the stuff is we're going to see where the rubber meets the road, right? Like the games are going to first be played. We're going to see how these teams react to, the pandemic situation and being tested and getting on the field and actually, playing football for the first time in months with no preseason games. And really, the first time that we're seeing game speed. So a lot of that is going to, come to fruition, and then we'll be able to take advantage on it going forward. Kev, we're just talking about the overall general views of the slate and kind of how we're thinking about attacking it and what things are sticking out to you just on an overall landscape here before we get into individual plays on how you feel like attacking this game. I know we had talked a lot about the Philadelphia situation. We talked about the Seattle and Atlanta game. We talked about some of these other teams we thought we could get exposure to because the pricing was just felt too cheap for them on DraftKings. How are you feeling overall now, having a week and a half to kind of dive into stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to, with so much uncertainty around how things are going to play out and in terms of, touches and targets and how things are going to really work, I think I'm going to try to stick to more of a straightforward approach this week, not get too cute, because I think that, like, for example, I think the games that we want to target are the ones that are the most straightforward. Like, obviously the Seattle game is 100%. I think one of the most targeted games. I think the Tampa Bay New Orleans game is another game that's going to want a lot of exposure to. I think I'm going to try to, and again, I just, like we said last week, I feel like not getting too cute with playing too much. I think trying to find the right tournaments to get into is probably definitely a way to go. Avoiding the Millie Maker, which is over 1 million people in it. I think
you're gonna earn that.
Probably a smart approach.
You're gonna earn that Millie. You're gonna earn that Millie. That's for sure.
Yeah, I want no part of that. So, I mean, with week one is always so volatile on a week-to-week basis or on a year-to-year basis, anyways. And I think this year is going to be more so.
Yeah, absolutely. And the madness. The madness is what we're excited about. The madness is what the Degen Nation wants to hear about. So let's kind of go into the slate and just talk about it a little bit more in depthly as we get, overall here in the grand scheme of things. And as I usually say when we do this podcast, it starts at the quarterback position. And, last week I felt like there was some talk about, Carson Wentz and attacking the Philly side of things. There was some talk about, is it worth it to pay up for Lamar Jackson? Getting exposure to Matt Ryan or Russell Wilson. Where are you guys leaning towards right now on the quarterback situation? Because I found myself really looking at three guys, and I really haven't strayed away from that. Maddie, let's start with you. I mean, you're the quarterback guy. You're the one that plays, only a certain amount of lineups, and you kind of just make your block, go with that. So where are you looking at right now as we sit here on a Tuesday night to get into Sunday slate? Yeah,
so just to kind of touch on my process very quickly, being a single entry to 3-entry max player, I've kind of shifted to 3-entry max over the last year or so. I try to target 3 stacks that I really like for the week, because usually it's really hard for me to narrow down to just one. So I usually try to target 3 that I like and build around those stacks on those 3 teams. So I know before show I said I wanted to talk about somebody. And And I want to start it off with Matt Stafford at home against Chicago. Ryan, you're the Chicago guy. Talk to me about these Chicago corners. They've got Kyle Fuller, who did not play good last year. He allowed, let's see, I've got it right here. He allowed 75 catches on 103 targets and a quarterback rating over 100. And then they're running out their second round pick on the opposite side.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be Jalen Johnson there starting on the opposite side. So probably.
And then Buster Screens in the slot, who isn't very good.
Right.
And now we've got
a guy who we've targeted traditionally.
Yeah. And so now you've got the Lions, who just signed Adrian Peterson, which – yeah, he may not come in and, be this workhorse or whatever for them. But the fact that they even signed him tells you that the running backs, they don't have full confidence in the running backs right now, whether it be health or performance or whatever. So to me, that signals, okay, this is going to be a Matthew Stafford show here, at least to start the season. And while Chicago's defense has been, they've been respectable over the last couple seasons, I mean, those cornerbacks aren't really anything special. And you've got Kenny Gallaudet and Marvin Jones and even Amendola, who, had a good year last year when he was on the field with Stafford. Stafford in 8 games, he threw 19 touchdowns and 2,500 yards in 8 games last year. That's an absurd 5,000-yard, 38 touchdown pace. So, I mean, I think he's going to go completely overlooked, but I think, playing at home in the Dome and an offense that could potentially be very pass heavy to start the year, I think, that's a spot, especially in tournaments that I want exposure to.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a matchup too, and I don't want to take away from the Stafford call so much so, Maddie, but Kenny Gallaudet, being a Chicago boy, he has always tried to go out there and torch these dudes, it feels like. I mean, you talk about the David Blau game last year in Chicago when he just annihilated this team, going for what was it that he went for? I had it written down here, 158 and 1. And he's pretty much had a touchdown or 100 yards in like 3 of his last 4 games against Chicago. So he's always, somebody who I look to target against this team. And like you said, Maddie, I mean, there's nothing that the Chicago secondary has really shown us as of late to shore up this defense, the back, 4 guys of defensive back. So you're getting a Matthew Stafford here who comes into the season, he's healthy. He's priced at 6,200 on DraftKings in a game where I just don't know, like we don't even know like how these teams are going to fare, so to speak. And really the lines for Vegas, I can't even really look at them because I'm looking at some of these other teams as we go through lines. And I'm like, man, I really don't know if this is really going to match, because I could see this game being sloppy, or I could, the Patriots defense is not the Patriots defense as we knew with these guys sitting out. So I'm not even looking at, the Vegas totals all so much. I'm just looking at, where's this defense? Where are the changes on the defense? Have they made any? No. Okay. So have they been able to stop anything in the past? Okay. No or yes. Then plug it in there. And I definitely like this call with Stafford and Gallaudet there going to it. And I think that Marvin Jones even has some interest too, when you're looking at a receiving corpse that really has him, Marvin Jones. What are we going to get from TJ Hawkinson? And then it's Danny Amendola and just a bunch of other guys, just Jags. Yeah.
I just, it's Vegas has it as a 44.5 right now, which is kind of the 44 to 46 range is kind of floats in the, and it's, it could be kind of slow. Like you said, might be a little sloppy. But Detroit's defense isn't very good. Detroit's favored in this by 3 points. I just don't see Detroit coming out and running the football over and over again. If they're going to move the ball, it's going to be from Stafford. And let's see, he's 6,200.
Yeah.
And the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th highest priced quarterback, and he's going to be unowned. Like I think a lot of people are going to look at that red number 9 next to Stafford facing Chicago, and they just forget how good he was last year. I mean, 19 touchdowns in 8 games and 2,500 yards is pretty ridiculous. It's just the fact that he missed half the season with an injury. So,
right. And one of the biggest redraft darlings, I feel like all summer long, was people were talking about Matt Stafford late. Go Matt Stafford if you're going late quarterback, and this is going to be a year. And what better way to showcase that than week 1 against the Chicago team? I definitely see merit in that call, Matty.
Yeah, I want to hop on when Swift's not, he's banged up. They're not going to rely on Kerryon Johnson. They brought in Adrian Peterson. Like, it just screams if they're going to move the ball, it's going to be through the air. And that's a spot I want exposure to. Kind of betting on talent more so than matchup. But, I mean, even the matchup's not horrible with the corners that Chicago is going to run out. So, I think that's where I'm going to start my tournaments is with a Lions stack. So I'm sure that's not what you were expecting, but hey.
No.
That's why we talk about it.
That is what we're talking about. And you're looking at guys that are around there, Matty, as I'm looking through DraftKings right now, and you got an Aaron Rodgers at 6,300 against Minnesota. So I don't know how much ownership he'll be garnering, but Wentz is right there at 6,300. You got Kyler Murray going against San Fran at 6,400. Josh Allen against the Jets. I know people are kind of hungry to kind of play Josh Allen. He's 65, and then Cam Newton right below him at 61. So, I definitely think the ownership there, which we'll be able to see, kind of get a little bit of an idea with the Thursday night slates, and kind of see where ownership is kind of, tending to lean towards. But I definitely think it will be lower, lower than we even could project. In this case, with a lot of people looking at those over unders and seeing that, it's only going to reach about 40 something. I'll pull it up here in a sec, but spreads 3. Mitchell Trubisky on the other side is named the starter. So people might not be expecting, a lot of fantasy goodness from that game. Kev, who's the quarterback that you're looking at starting your builds with this week as we get into this week 1 slate on DraftKings?
It hasn't changed. It's 100% Jimmy Garoppolo. I just think this is too good of a matchup. He shredded the Cardinals last year. The Cardinals defense hasn't got any better. He threw for almost 800 yards and 8 touchdowns against them last year in the 2 games that they faced each other. Nothing really changes here for me. It sounds like Deebo Samuel will be back, which is something we weren't really expecting, so he should be available. We'll have to wait and see on Brandon Ayuk, but running a Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle stack is just kind of, I think, right where it's at. So I mean, I just think it's too good to pass up on an opportunity to play him. He's only 5,800. Allows you to kind of get some of these other guys in. We'll talk about the other positions, but I'm probably gonna have the most exposure to Jimmy Garoppolo. It's just too good. Kendrick Bourne could also come and play depending on how things work out with their other wide receivers there. So, yeah, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. For some of the other guys, I think Carson Wentz is also somebody that I would want to play as well against Washington. Washington secondary is absolutely atrocious. They brought back Kendall Fuller, but I mean, other than that, I mean, he's still not even good. So, I think Carson Wentz and Deshaun Jackson's stack is also super. I'm going to have a ton of Deshaun Jackson this week, and I think he absolutely torches this defense again. And Deshaun Jackson's too cheap for what he is. And to be honest, I mean, they're not going to have Alshon Jeffrey. Jalen Reagor's now out. So in terms of just targets, I think it's going to be pretty easy to determine where those targets are going to go to. I think Greg Ward is 100% in play. I think people are way too low on him this week. Like, he got so much hype through camp, said that he was kind of the he was the Zach Ertz of the wide receivers for them, which is kind of high praise for him. So I think Greg Ward is also in play, but it's Carson Wentz, Deshaun Jackson, Greg Ward stack, I think is going to be something that you're not going to see a whole lot of. So again, I mean, he's only $100 more than Stafford. So I like the Stafford call. I love Matt Stafford this year, but I just think that the Carson Wentz is a little bit hard to get away from in this matchup against Washington. Of course, Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan are definitely that's probably where most of the ownership's going to go to, is paying up for one of those guys. I think, especially with the way that pricing is this week, it's really not that hard to get up to them. But I just prefer going Stafford and Garoppolo. And, like we talked about last week, I definitely think Derek Carr is also in play at 5,900. This Carolina defense is horrendous. They lost Eli Apple as well, which is probably their only corner that they had. So, I think that, they're, huh?
If you want to call it that.
Yeah, yeah. So this defense is just, they're another team that's trying to actively tank, and so Derek Carr is not somebody that I typically want to target, and maybe, but I think that on both sides, I think this can be a game that has a little bit of a sneaky shootout potential. Because I think Carolina's offense is good enough to push them. Oakland certainly does not have a great defense either. Their secondary is just as vulnerable. So I think if you wanted to run Derek Carr and whether it's Waller or Henry Ruggs or even Brian Edwards, I think is in play, and run it back with like a DJ Moore, I think, or a Christian McCaffrey, obviously, I think is a pretty good way to go too.
Do you guys think that Seattle-Atlanta game, do you think both sides, both Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson, are popular? Or you think guys, because they're only 300 apart, you think they go to one over the other? Because Matt Ryan, he shreds zone defenses, and that's what Seattle runs. They run a lot of zone coverage. So if I was picking, I would pick Matt Ryan, but I'm just curious if you guys have any lean on which side you think is going to be higher end.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, I would think Russ would be, just on the standpoint that I think if you're looking at getting exposure to Seattle in that game, I would tend to think that most people would lean Russ over Chris Carson to get to the running back. So you're probably looking at someone looking to stack Russ with Lockett or Russ with Metcalf. Matt Ryan is just such a roller coaster ride for DFS that I know that myself and others who I've talked to, it's just so hard to play him, when you don't really like. I kind of want to see how Atlanta works in Gurley, in this matchup. And the thing too with Seattle is they're only, if Atlanta's putting up points, then Russ, I think, could be good because he'll then be forced to throw. But if Seattle's going to be able to control the game script, I think that, they could just lean on Carson and just force Atlanta into trying to make plays. And how many times last year towards the end of the season did we see Ryan just, throw up duds and stall out on drives, having to punt on fourth down? It's just so infuriating to play him. So my gut says that Russ, and thank you, Maddie Moles Pod, for putting in the percentages there. It looks like Wilson at 16, Ryan at 10.3. Right now. I'm not, Maddie, let us know where you pulled that information from, so we can let the people know. But yeah, I think that's the way it would go. And you're looking at it too, Maddie. Like you pretty much are forced to think about playing Matt Ryan, Julio, and it doesn't always, that kind of just leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Now, if Julio goes off, you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be counting cash. But it's just the frustrating part of having, how do you play Matt Ryan without Julio? And it just makes you feel sick.
Don't you always get nervous to play Julio on Julio Jones the weeks that he's supposed to smash?
Yeah,
right.
I do.
It's always the matchups where it's supposed to be hard, tough for him that he just goes out and goes nuclear and drops 203 touchdowns.
Right, exactly. I definitely want exposure to that game, and I'm still trying to figure out ways to get pieces of that game at this point in time, because rightfully so, they're all priced up. So you pretty much have to either get one or two that you feel pretty confident in, or you're going full game stack.
Yeah. I may just end up getting my zone, attacking a zone defense with the tight end exposure through Hayden Hurst, who's like 4,300. He's like the one cheap piece of that Atlanta offense.
Right.
And we saw Hooper over and over and over again just shred zone defenses, and it's just a thing. Zones have softer coverage in the middle of the field, and the tight ends can just go find those holes in the zones and just sit down in the holes, and the quarterback can just pepper them. So. Hayden Hurst, yards per route run is the same, essentially the same exact production. Granted, he was in Baltimore and Hooper was in Atlanta. Same exact yards per route run as Hooper for the most part, within like a decimal point here or there. But I think the spike in volume is going to be a bump to Hurst, and a guy like Hooper who's not really efficient. He thrived in the Atlanta offense, so. I may just go that route and get my exposure that way because, like we kind of touched on 2 weeks ago, I really don't want to eat chalk in week one if I can help it, just because, there's so much unknown with like how these teams are going to perform. And, we may think, that this is the greatest matchup and, these guys are going to come in extremely popular. But if I can get a matchup that I think is similar, close to good at less ownership, then that's, I'm just going to side with that, especially in week one. So,
yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, I'm gonna need you. I know you guys are sitting down, but I'm gonna need you guys to ride with me on this. Oh, Maddie Mospod, thank you so much. Roto Grinders, where that information is coming from. He's even putting the numbers up there. Ridley 16.4, Jones 12% ownership, which Ridley the cheaper one seems about right, and Hurst coming in at 13 right now, 13%. And this is on a Tuesday, so those numbers will fluctuate for sure. But good to get, a first glance exposure on people who are already setting rosters on where they're leaning to. The quarterback, and you guys know I love GPPs, love being contrarian, that I'm looking at for week one, Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's 5,300 on DraftKings. He's going against New England and a New England defense that's missing Hightower, Chung, Shelton, Collins. Second highest pass play rate last year. Reunited with Chan Gailey as offensive coordinator back from their time at the Jets when Ryan was throwing, or Fitzpatrick was throwing over 500 times. And the funnel, the targets where you're looking to, you don't really have to guess. I mean, it's going to be Devante Parker. We don't know how Preston Williams is coming back from the ACL. They're not even saying that he could see his full complement of snaps already. So then after that, you got guys like, Grant and who else? Gesicki at tight end. So I'm looking at Fitzpatrick and I'm looking at Devante Parker, who absolutely torched Stephon Gilmore the last time that they were on the field together. And then you're looking at that, you're getting a quarterback wide receiver stack for just under 12K. And it's I'm expecting the Patriots to be able to get, pretty aggressive offensively with Cam being there. And we don't know what Sony Michel's health is. So they could be, in a situation where they're needing to pass a lot, taking advantage. And if Ryan Fitzpatrick is down, he has no problem in lighting it up. And you're looking at, some of the scores that he had last year when he was asked to throw, 40 or more times. And he definitely, paid in dividends on DraftKings, especially, getting you that 20 points that you're kind of looking for. And he's priced under guys like Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles there. It just really doesn't make sense for what the payoff could really be for him. Now, I'm not saying that he's necessarily going to be my main build and where I'm looking at, but definitely in high field tournaments, where it's single entry but high payouts there, I'm considering a Ryan Fitzpatrick, Devante Parker stack with my builds because the salary relief there, just lets you do so much. Plus, you could potentially have one of the top 5 quarterback to wide receiver stacks on this slate. Don't all jump at once.
No, I don't hate it. That Dolphins defense is going to be much better this year than they were last year is my only concern with, the Dolphins offense this year. They brought in Byron Jones. They already had Xavier Howard. Van Noy signed from New England. They got Agba from Cleveland. Like that, it's a new look defense. It's, they should be somewhat competent. And then you've got Cam on the other side for this week, who we just got no clue what that offense is going to look like in reality. I guess James White is, especially on a PPR site, is maybe the run back if you want to go with the Dolphins side. Probably James White is who I'd go with on the other side. It's because Harris is on IR. They're not going to just rely on Rex Burkhead. Michelle is dust. Dude runs on one knee.
Yeah, even if you're looking,
they don't have a tight end.
two rookie tight ends on the other side. You got N'Keal Harry, who's going to be coming in, Julian Edelman. And the first game that Cam is going to see, action. So we're going to find out kind of how this Patriots offense is going to be running. But these guys have always schemed to the quarterback. I feel like whether, Tom Brady, Matt Castle, Brian Hoyer, Jacoby Brissett, whoever's back there, they always are scheming ways to try and find ways to make points. And now we're getting a Cam Newton who I think Cam Newton is going to garner a decent amount of ownership this week at 6,100 on DraftKings. And so I'm looking at, okay, if we think that the Patriots are going to be putting up points, what's a way that I can get exposure to this game? And like you said, Maddie, yeah, maybe it is taking a James White there who's at 6K. Or you could take a shot on Cam Newton and James White together and just hope to get all of the work in that passing game and run game. We don't know what they're going to do in the red zone situation, if they're going to let Cam run like he once did before. So he could be sneakily getting, one or two vultures there on the rushing ground.
That's 6K James White price. That's just too high. I can't. Oh man. The only way I would play White is if I was running the Dolphins on the other side.
Yeah, it doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you feel good as a solo play.
Yeah.
Do you think Trubisky's in play at all? I know the narrative is that he's trash and that he is the worst quarterback in the league, but like the Lions defense doesn't scare me. He's only 5,400. I mean,
aren't the Lions who he threw his 6 TDs against?
I think
they are.
No, that was the Bucks, I think.
I think it was the Lions without Slay when Slay was out.
But I mean, obviously, I think the weapons, with Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller, it's pretty straightforward. I don't know, and he has that rushing ability in his range of outcomes as well that you kind of look for. Somebody, as long as he actually uses them this year. He didn't do it as much last year. I know he got hurt last year, and missed some time. I think with some had something to do with it. But with Trubisky starting, I mean, I don't know. I think that's a very probably a 1% play that nobody's running.
Yeah, like I really don't hate that at all, because I mean the same thing that we said about the Lions not having a run game, you can say about the Bears because they don't have Montgomery. They're not just going to give Tariq Cohen, a bunch of carries, and I would assume they're not just going to lean on their third string running back either, Ryan Nall. Like I just feel like both sides of that game on offense are going to be through the air. And it just feels really condensed, and we know where all the targets on both sides are going to go. So, like, while that's maybe one of the lower owned, lower total games of the week, I don't know. I just feel like it's a game that could end up, shooting out into the low 50s, and it's a concentrated offensive output on either side, and it doesn't cost me a lot of money either. I'm just really starting to fall in love with that game the more we talk about it.
So Trubisky has 7 career games where he's thrown for over 300 yards. And I believe 3, if not 4 of them have come against the Lions. Yeah,
he owns the Lions, dude. And the Lions defense is not good. And they got rid of Slay, too.
Welcome to Mitchell Trubisky week, boys.
I don't hate it at all, man.
But you know that it's gonna be great too for next week when all the people that when Trubisky just goes out and slays. If he does, that'll be fantastic. After all of the hate that man got over the offseason.
Yeah, and you are right, Kev. Like you're hoping to. I mean, here listen. Matt Nagy has gone. He could write a poetic book on how he feels about Mitchell Trubisky at this point. Like the dude was salivating over him. And so, just you heard Stacey Dales talk about on NFL Network, like she was on that call when he was named the starting quarterback, and they just love him here. And so they're going to give him every chance to succeed. And through that, you are hoping that you see some of those 2018 runs that we were getting. And if we could, if we get back to that where he's running, 6 or 7 times designed runs, especially without David Montgomery, this week, I think you could definitely, get an extra anywhere from, 4 to 7 points on the ground from Trubisky this week. So, and definitely being down there. And I love the narrow distribution of targets too. That's why I was kind of looking at Fitzpatrick. Like with Trubisky, you're just playing Trubisky, playing Allen Robinson, and you're good. Like you really don't have to get too creative outside of that. maybe you want to throw in Anthony Miller if you want to, but you just take those two guys and you can log out pretty much. And yeah, do the run back like Matty Mospot is saying, do the run back with Gallaudet, get your Gallaudet exposure there, Matty D. I mean, that's going to be interesting. That's another one where if I was in a field where it's 20 max or 150 max and there's just a ton of entries in there and I'm building multiple lines, that would be where I'd take a shot. I don't know if I would do it necessarily on my single entry builds.
Yeah. So fun fact, the projected starting defense for the Lions has 6 of the 11 guys were undrafted. So,
jeez.
As long as I'm reading that right, I think I am. But they lost Slay, but they brought in Trufant. So I mean, they're still going to have that number 1 corner. But I mean, the other side is Justin Coleman from Seattle. So, I mean, looking at the names on here, there's not really anybody. They've got a couple former New England guys, but yeah, that Lions defense is still not going to be very good.
Whew, that's some dicey names. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Mitchell Trubisky, and Matt Stafford. Before we move on to the running backs, let's just talk about these guys to the top tier and maybe who you would be more likely to pick. And when I say top tier, I'm going to take basically the top 5 guys here on DraftKings with Lamar Jackson, Russell, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady. The one game that we didn't really touch on in going through this process is the Saints and Tampa Bay game, being in the Dome in New Orleans with Drew Brees going against Tom Brady. A lot of exposure I feel like is going to be had on this game with them, creeping at the 50 over under total there. But the pieces in this game are so expensive that you have to get them right in order to, succeed, or you have to really hit on the game stack that we're targeting here. And it's like, you can't, the Saints are pretty much returning the same guys on defense there. They're stout against the run. So is Tom Brady going to be forced to throw? Who's the ball going to go to? Is it Godwin? Is it Evans? Like, how would you guys be attacking this slate, or are you guys even looking, or attacking this game, and are you guys even looking to get exposure to players on this slate?
I like Kamara. I think a lot of people are going to see that red number 1 next to Tampa Bay. And while the scheme kind of does transition year to year, like a lot of times we see defenses who, their production year over year is not sticky. And we see defenses, that project horribly, that come out and shock us. Like Tampa Bay last year, for example, that everybody said this is going to be a horrible defense, and they ended up being the number 1 run defense in the NFL.
Which is still actually what people talk about. Like you still hear people say all offseason how terrible Tampa Bay's defense is.
Yeah. And so people are going to play or not play Kamara because, Tampa Bay was extremely good against the run last year, but we don't know that that's necessarily true this year. And I think Kamara's due for a bounce back year. His red zone target share dropped pretty drastically last season. And I think that's going to go back up to where it was the prior 2 years. And that's where a lot of his, that's where his ceiling games come from, is when he scores 2 and 3 touchdowns. And I don't need a 100-yard rushing game from Kamara. I need, 7 catches for 75 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he's got you over 30 points. And that's what I need in 7,200. I know we wanted to talk about quarterbacks, but, 9K for Michael Thomas is kind of tough to get to, but I can absolutely swallow the 7,200 pill for Kamara.
I feel like for me, this isn't a game that I'll probably look to stack. I think it's more so a game that I'll look to get pieces from when I can, whether it's Chris Godwin.
It's just so expensive all around.
Yeah,
to be able to stack it up.
Trying to get Chris Godwin, or if I wanted to get weird and I was looking for kind of a one-off play like a Traquan Smith, for them, who's I think for
what's Emanuel Sanders' price?
He's cheap, 40-something.
Yeah, see, that's another piece. We've got no clue what his volume and weekly roll is going to look like.
See, but if you're playing Drew Brees though, like why not get Sanders? Oh, 57 actually. Okay, so he's priced up higher than I thought he was.
No fucking thank you on
That's
that.
tough. That's tough.
Let's 5,700 for an unknown role. Yeah, no thanks.
That's tough, dude. McLaurin is 56.
Yeah, give me the 25% target share that
That's
I know
crazy.
for a fact.
OBJ's 59. Like what? Oh man, that's gonna be fun. All right. Yeah, I'm with you. It kind of makes me nervous. It makes me nervous to not have a piece of this game in some capacity. So I definitely want to try and find ways to get exposure here. But yeah, the pieces are just so tough.
They're expensive. It's just like when you play NBA, you know, like even if let's say Giannis goes out and scores 55 points, not having him might not kill you because he costs so much. Right. So like even though he has a good game compared to everybody else, you know, you just when players cost a lot, they have to score a lot of points. And, you know, once you start getting up in there to the 9K range with Michael Thomas, like Thomas is one of the most consistent guys on a weekly basis. Like he will get you 20 to 25 points guaranteed, but he's not going to most weeks. He's not going to output, you know, put out that 40-point week that McCaffrey is going to get you for only 1,000 more. Sure. So it's just like, those are the, you know, when you cash versus GPP are, you know, kind of the things you got to look at. It's like, I'll take my chances not having a ceiling game week one for two of the highest price offenses on the slate.
No, that's fair. And while we pivot into running backs here, and let's start talking about some running backs. I feel like of the pieces of that game, people will most likely try to find a way to get to Thomas, especially if you're not playing a guy like Christian McCaffrey, because he's only 1,800 more than an Alvin Kamara. So when you're looking at it, you're like, okay, I'll sacrifice money on defense. I'll sacrifice money at the tight end. And then I'll pay down at running back. And we have a ton of guys at running back who are really, you know, opening up the slate, quote unquote, because of their price salaries. We got Antonio Gibson at 4K. We got, you know, the Jacksonville situation, how that's going to shade out. We got Tariq Cohen at 4,600 with no David Montgomery there to kind of spell him. So many guys here that are just cheap in salary that I feel like will garner some ownership and people will get to. So that could price out some of these guys in the mid range, like an Alvin Kamara, like a Aaron Jones, who trying to get some exposure to, Josh Jacobs, who I freaking am starting to love this week as I started to get him on some redraft rosters. And Kev, I know you've beat the drum on Josh Jacobs a lot this offseason, but he's in a great spot there going against Carolina. Like I really want to try and figure out how to get these mid-tier running backs into lineups where I can possibly, you know, garner, you know, 25 to 30 points on DK from three guys if I play a running back in the flex, and then take a chance on dart, you know, not dart, but cheaper wide receivers who I think could pay off. So as we, you know, Josh Jacobs is a guy that I'm finding myself getting to a lot of. Maddie, I know you talked about Chris Carson in our first look build, so I want to hear you on that. Aaron Jones is another guy who I've looked at. I talked about him last week, just of what he does against Minnesota, and they're not really having any wide receivers after Adams to really make you feel good about. And then as we get down into it, I found myself getting to a 4,900 Tariq Cohen this week, just because after Allen Robinson, I just feel like the targets are just going to be there for him to kind of pay off that salary in this game. Kev, let's start with you, man, and kind of where are you looking at when the running back situation and how it's kind of shaped out, and is Antonio Gibson just a lock for you at the minimum price, and you're going to figure out elsewhere of your other 8 spots how to be contrarian or how to make a build that not other people have?
Well, I think Josh Jacobs is such an easy play this week at 6,800. He's so much cheaper than, you know, going up to Christian McCaffrey or, you know, even the Dalvin Cooks. He's almost $1,100 cheaper than that. This is just a terrific spot. Carolina, like we already talked about, Carolina's defense is so bad. that I just don't see how you don't get in a ton of Josh Jacobs. He's going to be chalky, but
But Kev, don't they have so many pass catching backs that are going to take work from Josh Jacobs?
I remember all that. There was the Theo Riddick and all the other dudes they brought in that got released. Yeah, all offseason, that's all people kept talking about was, that's why he's not going to get the work, and then they get cut, and then just silence, crickets.
I mean, he's definitely in line here to see some good work, and Carolina is one of the most expected, defenses to that we're going to be able to target this year, so to speak.
Oh yeah, and then anytime it's a positive game script for them, Josh Jacobs cooks. I think it's definitely a Josh Jacobs week. I think Miles Sanders is certainly in play. I think people are going to be afraid of playing him because he's quite got the Q tag next to his name. Is he good? But there's been no reports whatsoever that he's not going to play this week. And because I was looking today, but there's nothing out there, and they actually cut 3 running backs over the weekend. So I think if there was any concern that he wasn't going to play this weekend, that he would. That they would have kept one of those guys at least for 1 week, because essentially on their roster it's him, Boston Scott, and then Corey Clement. So, I think 6,300 Miles Sanders against Washington is certainly an area that I can get on board with. And like I said, I think he could have a little bit lower ownership because of the fear of the injury. But I feel like that they kind of said from the beginning that it was minor, that they were just taking precautions with him. And he was another guy that everybody was talking about. Oh, just wait till they sign this guy. Wait till they sign Devonta Freeman or whatever other bum that people could fucking think of for a player that's going to take his job from him, or make Miles Sanders, because people don't like Miles Sanders for whatever reason, or it's the Doug Peterson narrative that that they don't like. He wants a committee backfield, which is the most ridiculous thing. Every NFL head coach wants a lead back. Do you know why they want a lead back? Because then you're not predictable. Because if you're a team that has a committee where everybody knows, okay, Tariq Cohen's in the game, they're probably going to be passing the ball here, right? They're not going to be handing it to Tariq Cohen.
Right.
So regardless, I just think that's ridiculous. And so, Miles Sanders at 6,300. I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him. In terms of Antonio Gibson, I think that he is super interesting, especially since he is the bare minimum, because DK raised up the minimum pricing to $4K for this week. I don't know if that's going to be something that they do from here on out. I think if they do, I think that's going to change some things, because before, what, it was $3K was the bare minimum.
Well, it's just for the running backs, I think, is what they did.
Yeah,
I think the wide receivers and tight ends are lower.
Yeah. I just think that's that changes a little bit for how you view some of these guys, but do you guys view Antonio Gibson as kind of a free square, knowing that he's probably going to be the lead back?
So let me read you this quote from Adrian Peterson when he got
that
cut.
Is the 100. Yeah, I already know what you're going to say. Yes, read it for the people.
Yeah. So when AP got cut, he said, Rivera just said this is always tough, but yes, we're going to release you, and we're going to go with this offensive style. I respect coach. Look, Gibson is a hell of a talent. This system really fits him. I feel like I can do that pony style too, more as a receiving back. We were all working on it, but they really want one main guy to do it, and they drafted Gibson for it. He literally said they drafted Gibson to run this receiving back, kind of what CMC was doing in Carolina. And, if Gibson scores a touchdown, you better have him on your team, because let's say he just rushes for a measly 40 yards. He's going to have probably 6 catches for 50 yards at probably bare minimum, if that's the role he's going to run. And then if he flops into the end zone, you're looking at a 20-plus point DK outing at bare minimum. And it's just
right,
that pass-catching role, if they're going to be playing from behind, which they are because their defense isn't good, it just feels like a free square. And it's not like this is some dude who's just runs like a 4.6 40 who's just going to clog down the field. This guy's 230 pounds and runs a 4.4 40. He's an athletic freak. And he's best
comparable to Joe Mixon.
Yeah, to me, it kind of feels like a David Johnson situation, like a guy who's just, a freak athlete that can catch the ball. And he played wide receiver in college originally, and they switched him over, and he wants to play running back. And so he's going to be Like, he's going to catch
Right.
a lot of passes.
And I think even more so with him is the fact that this wide receiver core, really offense, is devoid of really, I mean, who they throwing the ball to? It's Terry McLaurin. I mean, their tight end is, you hope that maybe Logan Thomas at age 29 can all of a sudden become a thing at tight end. You have Steven Sims, who runs, like a 4.6 something. They lost, Kelvin Harmon over the offseason to an injury. So, they have the rookie Antonio Gandy-Golden. Like, there is nothing there for them. So, he easily could be the number 2 in targets this year behind Dwayne Haskins or behind Terry McLaurin. And I think, it's possible that Dwayne Haskins could take a step forward this year. I know a lot of people, thought that Dwayne Haskins was terrible last year. I thought towards the end of the year, he started to turn it around a little bit, and especially for the situation that they were in. So I don't know. I think that I think Antonio Gibson it's going to be hard pressed. I think 6 to 8 targets isn't crazy, especially for this week. They're going to be playing from behind. They're going to have to throw the ball. And like you mentioned, if he finds the end zone, I think there's a lot to like with Antonio Gibson this week. And that's why, I mean, especially at 4K, I don't know. I'm going to have a lot of him. And I think they said he's going to be 35.5% owned. I think the way to get over that is just be ahead over the field on it. That's how you get the edge on that.
I agree. I feel like this isn't like a Marlon Mack, Jonathan Taylor situation where we don't really have an idea of, who's going to handle the bulk, or, maybe they ride a hot hand there. I just don't see a way Gibson really comes off the field. I mean, were they going to start handing the ball off to J.D. McKissic a ton? No, they're not going to do that. They drafted Gibson for this, coming straight from AP's mouth, he's spent the most time with these guys out of anybody. He's been the guy mentoring Gibson essentially, and now he's the one that said they drafted Gibson for this, and he was kind of shocked that they cut him. And to me, that just screams they want to give Gibson as much run as he can handle. And when you've got a good running back, you give him as much volume as you can when he's on his rookie deal, and then you just don't extend him. That's the smart thing to do as an organization. So the whole 33 carries in college thing, I'm not worried about it. The guy's a freak. He's going to catch a lot of passes. He's 4K on a PPR site.
Something that always been funny to me too is that people that talked about him over the offseason, people talk about him like he's not a capable 3-down back. He's probably raw, obviously, because he only had, I think, 33 carries, like you said, in college. But the dude is not, some small satellite back, and I think that's what people were. That's why people were talking about him. He's not some capable 3-down workhorse.
This isn't Tariq Cohen.
Yeah,
he's not this small little dude that's just gonna maybe catch passes here and there. No, this guy is a physical freak. He's 230 pounds and runs a 4.40, and he's known for his receiving ability. It's, to me, that in my mind, I just picture David Johnson, and I want to be on board when he's at 4K.
Yeah, you put him in, and you don't really have to think about the rest of your roster. It does make some nice salary relief there, and especially I think he would be higher than 35% owned if he was listed as the number 1 guy on the depth chart. So you're not only getting leverage on him by playing him overweight of 35%, but then all the people who potentially could be playing J.D. McKissic this week because he's just listed as the number 1 guy on the depth chart, and roll with him.
You know what this feels like? Wasn't James Conner 3,500 or something that week where he stepped in for when Bell was holding out or something, and nobody played him because they were
was he that cheap?
Yeah, and he was 30% or not even 30%. He's 20%, and then the next week they raised his price a little bit, and everybody hopped on at 60%. It's just I just feel like that's what's happening here. Is he's 35% seems high, but it's too low for who he is and what the role he's going to have. But I do think there are other, I guess the case you could make in tournaments that running back is pretty, there's a lot of guys to like this week, especially, up around the 6 to 7K range. You got Eckler, who was the RB2 overall behind CMC when the 6 weeks Melvin Gordon was out. You've got him at 7K against Cincinnati. Right. You guys already hit on Josh Jacobs against Carolina. The thing with Jacobs is if you think the Raiders win the game, you play Josh Jacobs because he smashed in games that the Raiders were playing from ahead, and then he did not really do well in games that the Raiders were trailing last year because he wasn't as utilized in the pass game, and they couldn't really get him going on the ground. So if you think the Raiders win this week, which I do, makes for a good Jacobs play. And then you guys touched on Miles Sanders. He's the other main running back that I'm interested in. 6,300 against Washington is just egregious. Like, the dude's going to handle as much as he can handle, 20-plus touches probably. At 6,300 against Washington defense that's just been gashed on the ground over the last few years.
We got to talk about, before we move on to wide receiver real quick, we got to talk about three situations here that I feel like are going to shape the slate from running back. And that is, what are we doing with Tampa Bay? What are we doing with San Fran? And what are we doing with Buffalo? Because these are three situations here where the running back could matter on the slate from how the teams are schemed.
So Buffalo, I think that, like, I can't play Devin Singletary. It would have to be Zach Moss, which I think Zach Moss is like 4,400. I think
it costs more than Gibson.
Yeah, he's 4,400.
Yeah. So, like, if I was going to play somebody, it would be Zach Moss, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if how big of a role he's going to have between the two of them, right? This feels like a game that they're going to smash the Jets, which is obviously, would bode well, because I think that maybe they give more work to Zach Moss to kind of get him more experience. So at 4,400, considering he didn't have any preseason time, he is actually the better pass catcher between the two, between him and Devin Singletary, which is funny. Because I think a lot of people, when they talk about the two of them, they act like Devin Singletary is going to be the satellite back, and Zach Moss is going to be the kind of between the tackles grinder, and Zach Moss is actually a better pass catcher than Devin Singletary is. So it's just tough to project their touches for week one. And I think you could say the same thing about the Indy situation and how it's going to work out with Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor. I love Jonathan Taylor as a prospect, but they're saying that Marlon Mack is going to be the starter, which who cares? I don't really care who the starter is going to be. I just want to know who's going to get the most touches. And just because you're listed as a starter doesn't mean you're going to get the most touches. And let's face it, this is a fantastic matchup. Mm-hmm. The Jaguars are actively tanking. They are doing whatever they can to tank this year. And so, like, it is intriguing to play one of these guys. But you know what? If I felt like that Jacksonville could even keep it somewhat close, at least offensively, that I would rather play Nyheim Hines, because we know how much that Phillip Rivers loves to dump the ball down. Over the last 3 years, he has thrown to the running back at the highest rate of any quarterback in the league. And I think a lot of people sleep on Nyheim Hines. Like, Nyheim Hines is somebody that kind of like that James White type play, right? Where I think that he's going to have weeks where he gets 10+ targets. But this isn't the type of game, though, that I feel like the game script's going to call for him to be able to get those types of usage, because I think that unless you think Jacksonville is going to keep this game close offensively, then that's the only way that I could foresee myself playing Nyheim Hines. And I feel like that Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack are going to kind of cannibalize each other a little bit. And do they really make themselves worth it to play at this point? Like, I would rather to kind of wait for the situation to kind of figure itself out before I want to play any money and put any money on these guys, because I just feel like there's too much volatility to go on here.
That's exactly how I feel. And it's like, why do I want to lose sleep over making a decision over those two guys that, like you said, they could cannibalize each other. Like, they could both run for 100 yards and a touchdown. But in reality, I want, one of them to get all of that production. So it's like, why lose sleep over, do I got to pick between Mac and JT, or, just play the running backs that are going to be the high volume guys, and not try to play that guessing game, and play more of a guessing game with a wide receivers that's more of a volatile position anyways. I'm just going to take the volume that I know, because there are like we already touched on, 6 or 7 different running backs that we know are in good matchups and have the good volume that's going to be there. So, like, I'm just going to play those guys. And if one of these guys these hypotheticals burns me, then so be it. I'll take my medicine and move on to the next week. But there's too many good spots and high volume guys for me to play with it when I'm running out only 3 teams. Now, if you're playing 150, that might be a little different. Then you can kind of, expand your horizon as to what you're kind of exposing yourself to. But,
you guys aren't going to play James Robinson?
No, absolutely not.
He's
not supposed to be started this week. If he was 3K, if he was the nut minimum at 3K, like I would have some interest in him. But I can't do it, not at 4K.
Because they got Chris Thompson and they've got a Zegbo and
yeah.
Well, I mean, it depends on how much you believe in the beat reporters. They came out and said that the reason they cut Leonard Fournette was because of how well James Robinson played. How comfortable they felt with cutting Leonard Fournette was because of James Robinson. And I guess he was one of the stars of camp for Jacksonville was how well James Robinson played. And James Robinson himself is actually he's got great burst for a running back, and his last 2 years in college, I mean, he put up pretty big numbers, albeit I think it was at Indiana State. So, big powerhouse conference there, but I don't know. Yeah, I can't play James Robinson, but I'm sure some people will, at 4K, but again, if he was 3K, like we would get on normal week, like a normal, week, then I would probably maybe be somewhat interested, maybe throw him in a random tournament here and there in the event that something happens, but not at 4K.
What ways can you guys see yourselves getting McCaffrey onto lineups?
Well, Gibson McCaffrey is going to be a pretty popular cash build, I would think.
Yeah, I would say so.
And then you're going to have to, not, I wouldn't call it punt, but you're going to have to find a cheaper quarterback too.
Probably Wentz, Desean. You're not spending that much of your salary there. I mean, 10K is a tough pill to swallow with.
And there's, I hate to say this, but there is kind of an unknown with McCaffrey too, right? With having a new quarterback and a new coaching staff. Like,
absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I know what Miles Sanders is going to do for Philly when they have no wide receivers and he's 6,300 against Washington. Like, I feel like I know what Gibson's going to do at 4K. I feel like I know what Kamara is going to do regardless of how bad the matchup is, and he's 3,000 less than McCaffrey. I feel like I know what Josh Jacobs is going to do if they're winning the game.
Right.
I don't know.
Like you said, Maddie, I mean, you're looking at playing McCaffrey, and you play him at 10K, like you're looking for 40.
You need 35 to 40 at least.
Yeah.
Because there will be a handful of running backs that match the mid to upper 20s. Right.
You're sitting there at 22 to 25 points, and you're not feeling great about it.
Yeah, and with how the running back position is kind of priced down, normally what we see, normally you have a couple running backs in the 8K range, you have a couple running backs in the 9K range. To go from 10 dropping down to 7,900, that's such a big price difference. Like I may have a little Chris McCaffrey, but it's going to be very small. It's going to be in a couple lineups, something like that. Like I feel like I can make much better lineups with just avoiding him, and with like you guys talked about with how much he's going to have to put up to pay off that price tag I just don't think you need to do it this week.
And they've got receivers now too. Like they've got DJ Moore, they've got Robbie Anderson, they've got Curtis Samuel. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. I just wanted to get that in there because I know people are going to see that. I mean, he's the 101 pick. He smashed fantasy last year, made a ton of people money in DFS last year. And I just feel like people are going to just look at every way, shape, and form to go back to the well. And I just haven't done that so far in builds just because I saw the price tag and was like, nah, I'm good. But he is still C-Mac. So we got to, I just want to see it. I want to see it first before I'm paying up on that. And I don't think it'll fluctuate all too much in the coming weeks. Even if he's still putting up like 25, 27, I still think they'll price him up there high. He'll have to go out and have an absolute dud to have that price drop down all too much. All right, let's talk about wide receiver. And we kind of touched on the wide receiver position at the top where you got Michael Thomas there. He comes in at $9K. He's the top. Then it drops down to $7,700. Then you got Devante Adams at $73, Godwin and Evans $71 and $69 respectively. We got top ownership here. It looks like it's from Roto Grinders. We got Marquise Brown coming in at 27.9, Djex at 27.6. I'm surprised that Djex isn't ahead of that, or Marquise Brown at least. Then you got Metcalf at 26.7, Mclaurin at 17.4. So, I mean, you can see how people are looking to build, right? Like people are trying to get to Lamar Jackson. Okay, how can I, get his offense? Let me get Marquise Brown. People are trying to get exposure to the Tampa Bay New Orleans game by getting in Chris Godwin. There's going to be a lot of guys at the wide receiver position that go under the radar. Michael Thomas right now coming in at 10%. That's just crazy. That's just what I'm saying. Drew Brees in the dome. Like, I'm going to have to figure out ways to get this dude onto lineups. Because if he goes bananas, like, if that game shoots out, I just see him really paying off. But let's talk about this position. I mean, I talked about Devante Parker being at 6K. He has some GPP interest for me, just with the way that their receiving core is shaping out and the way he kind of finished out last year. I just think he makes for a strong play. They got him with the Q tag. He's got the red 1 against his name, but this this New England defense, I think we can maybe take advantage of them early, while people are kind of forgetting that they're, half their secondary is sitting out and they're missing 2 key guys in the front 7. Seattle guys, I just don't want to guess on them. A guy like OBJ, who's 5,900 going against Baltimore. I've found myself trying to build teams with him on there, because that price just seems so cheap for a guy like OBJ. We talked about Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, being 5,600. I mean, one of the first things we talked about on last week's pod was this price tag, and it's just way too cheap for a guy who, in the industry, people are talking about, could this guy be a wide receiver 1, or is he going to be the wide receiver 1, or second year wide receiver? Nobody else on this team is even has close to the talent of what he has. He's priced at the same price as John Brown. Like, it just makes no sense. And then, Deshaun Jackson, who's down here at 4,900, who's coming in right now. It's the second most owned wide receiver without Jalen Reagor being there, without Alshon Jeffrey being there. It's going to be him, JJAW, Greg Ward. Kev, I know you mentioned Greg Ward and possibly getting some shares of him to be contrarian. I don't mind that. Where are you guys finding yourself leaning towards in the wide receiver pool here?
One, it's been a rough day for Odell. Like, he was trending for most of the day for not good reasons. When I first saw, I was like, oh, what's he? Is he get hurt or something happen? And then all of a sudden, I'm like, what is? I was like, oh, okay. Poor man. They did that man wrong. But anyway, one, by looking at that ownership percentage that we've seen, I think it's fucking ridiculous that Tyler Lockett's only coming in at 10% ownership projection, and fucking DK Metcalf is 27%.
I agree.
Like, that is fucking ridiculous to me. Like, give me Tyler Lockett all day at that, if that's how it's going to go. Like, whether you want to run it, I mean, because he's not even that expensive. I think that he is definitely the best. I think that, I mean, if you look, I mean, inside the goal line last year, he was like top 5 in red zone receptions last year, or in zone receptions. most of his touchdowns came within the end zone. Like, I don't know. Like, I think a lot of people look at Tyler Lockett still and like he's just a deep threat, and that's not what he is. He's a nuanced route runner. And I still think that as of right now, that's what DK Metcalf is more of that deep threat 9-route guy. I think he could develop into something more than that, but right now that's kind of who he is. But Tyler Lockett, that's just disrespectful to my man Tyler Lockett. Like, I figured it would be the other way around, that Tyler Lockett would carry much more, or be much more similar in terms of ownership. And Tyler Lockett's only $6,500. Like, it's not even like he's that expensive over DK Metcalf. So I don't know. Like, I know DK Metcalf. There's about DK Metcalf's 5,800 compared to Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I just think that's ridiculous to me. I'll take Tyler Lockett at that price range at 6,500 all day.
I agree. I also think the Chicago and Detroit wide receivers are egregiously priced down as well. A-Rob is 6,500, Gallaudet 6,200, Marvin Jones is 5K. I think he's something like that. He's in the 5K range.
Yeah, Marvin Jones 5,500.
5,500. Yeah, so it's just like you get all of the volume in that game, and it's so cheap. So like even if you're not stacking it up, like you can pivot off of DK and play Gallaudet for only 400 more.
Yeah, Kenny Gallaudet at 6,200. That's ridiculous.
For low ownership. And I mean, you're looking at guys around him, like Ridley's there, Tyler Boyd, DJ Chark, Keenan Allen, even a guy like Stephon Diggs, I think, with Josh Allen being on their side, them going against the Jets could garner more ownership than a Kenny Gallaudet.
I like Stephon Diggs this week. I think Stephon Diggs at 6,400 is certainly a thing you can do. I agree. Like, I think Diggs is actually, I touched on this 2 weeks ago. Like, you look at Diggs's deep ball targets or average depth of target, and it went up each year, and it's like a depth of target last year of over 15 yards per target, and now he's paired with a deep ball guy in Josh Allen. Like, I think Diggs is he absolutely is in play for tournaments against a non-existent Jets secondary. Coming in.
And speaking of 3%. And speaking of deep ball targets, what are the odds, that Desean Jackson, he's kind of utilized more as take the top off, push the secondary back. And now let's just pepper him underneath with Greg Ward, Zach Ertz, and Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders. Like, Jackson's going to get a couple deep targets a game, but like, I feel like he's there to open stuff up more so than actually, take in 8 to 10 targets a game,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it just never feels good to take chalk Desean Jackson.
Right. And like, I guess I'm just trying to talk myself out of the chalk Desean Jackson.
Which I think you can do. I mean, when he's 4,900, it's not like he's the minimum, you know what I'm saying? And with the pass catchers there, and Carson Wentz is not a guy who peppers the number one receiver all too often, right? And we know, and Desean is not a possession receiver as well either. So, like, I mean, this dude is going to be spreading. I mean, you're looking at it like we've talked about it. Miles Sanders, you got 2 tight ends. You got Greg Ward, who is getting, run there late last year, who he felt confident with going to on, key possessions in games. And then Arcega-Whiteside comes back in his second year too. There's just so many different mouths to feed there. It's like you could play Desean, or you could find somewhere in your build to get $700 if you don't have it already and play Terry McLaurin. And I would much rather play Terry in the situation that it's Haskins, it's Terry, they have the rapport together, and he is going to just pepper a guy a ton of times, and there's nobody else to kind of take it away from him, where Carson Wentz is kind of like the player who goes out there and he just is trying to make the correct play. He's not going to force anything. He's not going to, do anything outlandish. He's going to game manage to the nth degree and just go out there and make the smart play, which doesn't always bode well for, getting a guy to go off in fantasy, so to speak.
How many people are going to be tilting whenever John Hightower is the guy that catches that deep 60-yard ball from Carson?
Not me, because I'm fading. Djax. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't insane.
If
I've seen a lot of Djax hype this week already.
Yeah, if you're playing cash and they got double up tournaments going on, then yeah, you want to have him because he's going to be 30 to 40% owned in those situations, and so by having him, it won't necessarily kill you. But when you're looking to take down a GPP, and especially in the single entries too, like just by pivoting off of this one guy who's expected to be chalk, who doesn't really the avenues for him to get there aren't really matching up all that well, and you could see a situation into where Philly isn't really needing to be pass heavy because they're controlling this game so much against Washington. Then you put yourself in a good position to kind of take the top and not share it with somebody else.
Yeah, and let's be honest too. Like he could run his first go route and pull up with a hammy.
Oh God, Twitter would explode. Or he could go out there and he could get 84 tutty, and it's like, and that's fine. I don't think it gets to the point where you need to have him until he gets 102. Yeah. He goes out there and gets 102, and then you start shaking people's hands and you say, all right, you got that play. But
I'm basically betting on low volume is what I'm betting on. Like he can, if he catches one long touchdown, fine. That's not going to burn me. But where I get burned is if he catches, 6+ passes and goes over 100 with the touchdown.
Right. With the plus 100 bonus.
Yeah. That's where I get burned. And I'm just, I'll take my chances that he goes, maybe 3 for 65 and 1, and that's fine. I can live with that.
Right. And then you just got to get, if you're not, you got to think about how the other teams are going to be built too with them. Like, okay, somebody's taking Desean, they're taking Gibson. If you play Desean, like how many of those teams are going to have Carson Wentz on the other side? So you have to find you will definitely try and find ways to get the leverage of points there to where even if he does kind of go off, you can still get other players who you expect to go off as well too, without the ownership tag of what Desean will carry.
I agree.
Let's talk about the Arizona and San Francisco guys. And from a wide receiver standpoint, is anything really, really sticking out to you guys here? Like I see Christian Kirk here coming at 5K. DeAndre Hopkins, he's priced up at the 7K range. I don't know if I'll get any of him this week. I kind of want to see how that plays out. But this is definitely a game that speaks on paper of fantasy goodness. So I guess I'm trying to figure out if there's pieces that can be had from this game with lower expected ownership or to find leverage on the field. Like Kendrick Bourne is 5K. I don't really know how I love that in a one-off situation, but are there any guys here that we can really feel confident about? I mean, Debo is only 5'3", but he's not going to be 100%. I don't feel like he's not participating in practice, and his status is up in the air. So I mean, we could be looking at just Kendrick Bourne and Kittle.
Yeah, it's almost just Kittle, and maybe if you wanted to play Kenyon Drake, if you're confident in his foot, because he did really well against San Francisco both games last year. And you could at least last year you could run on San Francisco a little bit. It was the passing game that kind of struggled, but yeah, I mean, again, like especially when you look at San Francisco in the air, they just have a lot of different guys they can throw out on the field and just attack you with different ways. Like I can't remember which game it was, but the backup running back, the first target he got all game was the game-winning touchdown. And they had said that they had drawn that play specifically up for like a late game situation and for him. And so it's like when Shanahan's going to do stuff like that, that's so unpredictable. And I can't predict that the backup running back's going to catch the game-winning touchdown because that's what they have drawn up their sleeve. That's the kind of stuff Shanahan does. Like, and I just feel like Kittle is the one guy on that offense right now until Debo gets healthy that I can really trust on a week in, week out basis. And I don't really want to, jump on a Trent Taylor or a Kendrick Bourne or somebody like that could, maybe only catch like 3 passes for 30 yards. And even if he scores, we just It's not going to burn me.
Yeah, DraftKings just got smart on that pricing with Kittle because while he is 7,200, and I do feel like you have to treat him as a wide receiver and not necessarily a tight end, like that is a hard pill to swallow there. It's Arizona, target tight ends against Arizona. I get it. It's Kittle. There's nobody else. But that is
You think that Jordan Reed could be in play? Like, I know it seems crazy, but I think that if they have all these guys out, if Samuel were to miss and Ayuk were to miss, like I think you could see them run a lot of 12 personnel, and Jordan Reed, I think could actually see some volume at that price.
Yeah, see that's what I'm saying though. Like Shanahan's gonna I just feel like he's gonna use all these guys. He's just gonna use everyone. And I've got no way of knowing who it's going to be or if it's even enough for one person to where it matters. Like I could see San Francisco scoring 30 plus points and Garoppolo naked is what wins you money.
But look, what we can really talk about though is Dan Arnold. Like he's always in play. Like
yes, he is always in play.
We're moving to tight ends, Kev. Let's get it.
Well, I just saw his name up there whenever you were going through stuff and just.
No, but I think I agree, Ryan. 7,200 for Kittle is tough because then I look at freaking Zach Ertz for 5,800, and he's going to be the number one option on that offense against Washington. Then we talked about, tight ends against zone defenses. You got Hurst at 4,300. And usually when I pay down at tight end, you need somebody who's going to catch a touchdown or two. And I feel like that Hurst can get me there with that. Or even, a Dallas Goedert, like 4,100. He's kind of interesting at that price against Washington. So, yeah, man, 7,200 for Kittle. I want to play him so bad, but it's just so – even Mark Andrews at 6K against Cleveland. Like, I feel like Andrews is a miniature version of Kittle in terms of efficiency. So,
yeah, when they get into that red zone too, I could definitely see myself getting some Andrews, just knowing that I'm saving 1,200 off of Kittle and not going to necessarily have to kick myself. I mean, if Kittle can go out there and get 580 in a tutty, and maybe that is enough at the tight end where everything else is nasty, and you feel okay with getting that out of 7,200, but. If Mark Andrews, even on the limited efficiency, I mean, this guy was going out, 4 catches, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns, or, 3 catches, and 2 of them were touchdowns. Like, that's just insane. So I definitely want to have shots on him. I could see people wanting to play Jared Cook in that game at that price tag, but I won't. I mean, he just doesn't do enough, I feel like, and doesn't get enough volume for me to ever feel confident that he'll pay off. I do have some interest in Mike Gesicki because if they do try and play the receivers straight up on Miami and just are leaving the middle of the field wide open for him, New England, that is, I think he could, definitely pay off that price tag as well too. What else do we got here? Kev, you talked about Derek Carr a little bit. So Darren Waller at 5,900, you'd be okay going with that?
I don't hate that price tag, especially, considering the matchup and everything else with Carolina. 5,900, I don't think is egregious. I could see people why, people would rather play Ertz, who's actually $100 cheaper in that price range, but I think you could play Waller there. I think Hunter Henry is certainly a viable play against Cincinnati and their defense. We know that Tyrod Taylor likes to target his tight end, going all the way back to his days in Buffalo. So I think that he is somebody that I would want to play as well. That I don't think is getting a whole lot of run this week, and Hunter Henry. And I think there's you guys, we already talked about Hunter Hurst at 4,300. Dallas Goedert, I think, is somebody, but TJ Hawkinson at 4,200. I think this could be a real big year for him, kind of the experience his true breakout, like we thought we were going to get early last year whenever he had that monster game and then just disappeared. But, I think for me at tight end, it's pretty much going to be pretty straightforward again. You know, I have no problem with paying George $7,200 for George Kittle. I know he's so much more expensive than everybody else, but there is just nobody else there. And, you know, Arizona was kind of the flow chart last year, right? I mean, whoever's playing Arizona, that's who you played. They didn't really do much to upgrade that. So George Kittle could see 15 targets in this game.
Right.
So
I don't mind it.
Yeah.
It's just tough because the thing about it is, like, when you're thinking about builds, and so you're looking at all these other tight ends that are on the early slate set of games, like, unless somebody, you know, really goes off and you're still sitting there and you have Kittle, like, that could start skyrocketing people, like, you know, who have him on builds because he's in that afternoon late set. So you really just would be looking at yourself being hurting if you play somebody who's gone early and they only have, you know, let's just say 10 to maybe 15, unless they're, you know, 4K and under. You're really just like, damn, what's Kittle gonna get? And you're sitting there sweating the game out because he could go off and get 20 every catch. You're just like hating life. Jack Doyle coming in at 3,600. I know he's got the Q tag, but Burton is on IR, so he could be the only guy there that Phillip Rivers, you know, can lean on. We know how much he likes tight ends. He's 3,600. He doesn't need to do a lot to pay off that price tag. Am I crazy for thinking about him, or?
No, I don't think that's crazy at all. I think it's actually a pretty decent play, especially at the price tag at 3,600. I mean, if you look at, it's kind of, so like we haven't really, I don't even think we've talked about the Indy side about this other than the running backs. So we never talked about the pass catchers here either, really. I think that for Indy, I mean, I think Jack Doyle, makes a lot of sense, especially early on here. And I think if you wanted to, you know, Jacksonville's defense is absolutely horrendous. We've already mentioned that. I don't think that's really breaking anything down for anybody, but he's likely going to come in at like sub 10% ownership. And, you know, I think asking for him to pay off that price, you don't need a whole lot, but I think 5 for 60 and a touchdown is certainly in the range of possibilities for him. And you know, in this matchup, I mean, because where also the target's going to, I know they have Paris Campbell that a lot of people like. They have Michael Pittman, the rookie, T.Y. Hilton, but, you know, I don't know. I do like that call with Jack Doyle at 3,600.
Yeah,
probably,
I would,
you know, get off the chalk. That's Dan Arnold at 3,500. So, you know, let's pivot.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've played Jack Doyle a couple of times, and obviously this is a new situation with him, new you know, offense with Phillip Rivers there at the helm, but it just always kind of makes you nervous. You just never know what you're going to get from this guy, and like I said, he's on the early set of games, so he goes out there and he only gets you, you know, 8-9 points or whatever. You're really not feeling good about that. Will McNeil coming into the chat talking about Chris Herndon. He's 3,300. Talking about him being the best cheap play under 4K.
Yeah,
that's not bad idea going on the Buffalo side or attacking Buffalo if they're going to be from behind.
Yeah, and we know they love Chris Herndon. He has been hyped up all offseason from there, and you know, he was somebody a couple years ago whenever he first was coming out that people were really came on, and he was kind of on nobody's radar in terms of you know, prospects and everything else. And you know, last year he suffered injuries all throughout the all throughout the season. Every time we thought he was going to be back, he got hurt again. So, but yeah, Chris Herndon at 3,300, that's incredibly too cheap.
Wasn't he suspended too or something like that? Didn't he like suspended the first 4 games?
I think he was suspended for the first 2 games. Then he got hurt. Yeah, it was a ride.
Been a roller coaster ride for Chris Herndon. So, you know, here's to him to get back on track and see if he can do it against Buffalo.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I mean, really, though, if you look at they have every one of their wide receivers are hurt outside of Jameson Crowder, right? Denzel Mims has an injury. Rashad Perriman has been going in and out of injuries. So right now, I mean, it's Jameson Crowder and it's Chris Herndon. Like, those are the kind of the 2 only options they have outside of, I guess, Le'Veon Bell as pass catchers. Like, there's not a lot there. Like, they're pretty beat up in that situation. So, I mean, Chris Herndon is certainly going to be the guy down inside the red zone they'd be looking for as well. So, I'm 3,300. That's just entirely too cheap.
Yeah, I like that call from Will there. Thank you, Will, for getting into the chat.
And the slander for Dan Arnold will not stand. Okay, I just want to let that know right now.
How much Dan Arnold, Kev?
Realistically, probably zero. But we can never. I can never not talk about Dan Arnold.
We'll talk on Sunday morning as you're setting lineups and like, damn, I don't have a Dan Arnold lineup yet, and then every team all of a sudden starts having Dan Arnold as of late because you're loving the Bills. You can get with them.
Maybe I'll create one. Who knows? Maybe I'll create one to see how it goes. But I still love Dan Arnold, and I actually think he could end up being somewhat of a thing this year.
Hey, I mean, let's see it happen. Let's see it come to fruition, and let those.
Well, it's not saying a whole lot to be a thing as a tight end. Okay, like you go out and get 40 for 450 and 5, and you're borderline tight end one.
Oh, geez. Here we go. Now borderline tight end one again with Kelsey and Kettle got something to say about that.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about low end tight end one. I'm talking about redraft.
I got you. Right? I got you,
dude. I keep looking at Goddard's freaking game log from last year, and I don't know. I just keep getting more interested in him. While you guys were talking, I'm just sitting here staring at his game log. And
dude, I guarantee you, Maddie, you will be tilted. You could be tilted.
Why?
I see that. But
from week 11 on,
what do you
6, 8, 7, 6, 6, 12, 10, and 8 targets.
But it's a very similar situation than what it was last year with all those guys getting hurt.
Exactly, and that's essentially it's the same scenario as last year, except you throw D Jackson in the mix.
I mean, they added, John Hightower, which who knows how much of a role he'll have early. J.J. Arthur-Whiteside is still there, but Greg Ward may be the leading pass catcher, which at wide receiver, so which is exactly where we were, at the end of last year. So
yeah, I guess with all the injuries too.
And looking at his game log, he's consistently in the mid-teens, but he wasn't catching any touchdowns. So that 24-point game, he was 6 for 91 and a tutty. So if he catches a touchdown, right, he's gonna get you almost 20
9
points.
9 for 91.
Yeah, that was one of his 12 target games. It's just man, he was so consistent without any touchdowns. And if you just throw in, it's Washington, right? He can score against Washington.
6 and 55 against Washington last year, 10-point win. But
the only thing I would say with last year, though, is they have to remember is that, especially that first game of the year, was that Washington. I think that was the game that Washington actually came out on top early and was putting it to the Eagles early, and then the Eagles had to come back in that game. If we get a different game script and the Eagles get up early on them, it could kind of we could change all of that where they just lean on the run and kind of milk the clock. We don't see the Eagles have to really air the ball out. I think that would be the only concern I would have with playing Washington is you want Washington to be able to keep this game close.
Is a Philly-Washington game stack viable?
Yeah, because I think the pieces are cheap enough and where production is going to come from. It probably will be lower scoring. I don't think it's going to get into the mid-50s in terms of final score unless you get, the Eagles scoring 30-plus points, which is viable. But
right. I'm just thinking about in all the pieces we talked about, and you could legit build a roster that might be okay with Wentz, D-Jax, a tight end, Gibson, and McLaurin.
It feels like a game I'm just going to pick and choose from as opposed to just loading up.
Right. Which is fair, but I'm already doing builds, and I feel myself. I'm at least getting 2 pieces of that game in every build
which is fine. Yeah, that's fine.
So you think Dwayne Haskins is going to win $70 million this week? Is what you think?
No, it's Mitch Trubisky.
Hey.
We had Fitzpatrick last year.
I know.
Yeah, we did have Fitzpatrick. Fitzmagic. All right, let's talk about these defenses here before we build our team and close it out as we usually do. And defense, we kind of talked about it last week with the minimum price. We kind of saw dip towards the end there last year on DK under the 2K range. It looks like they brought that back with Washington being the minimum at 2K. But definitely we got some cheap defenses, I guess, that you can consider.
Dolphins
down here.
Dolphins.
Yeah. Dolphins at 2K against New England.
That's exactly where we were at the last time. But
Yep.
it's still the same.
It hasn't changed. Dolphins.
I'm looking here. What about well, damn. No, I don't know if you could go there. I mean, Colts at 3K, I feel like is going to be popular too. And that's I'm fine with that against Jacksonville. Mr. Minshew kind of making mistakes. I don't think there's anybody above 3K that I could consider though. I mean, Philly's going to be chalk, but they're 3,600.
Yeah, I usually just try to save money with defense and play the variance game. I'm telling you, man, that Dolphins defense, their personnel is a significant upgrade this year from last year. They may not be, one of the top 10 defenses, but they're not going to be a bottom feeder defense either.
So neither of you guys are going to have exposure to New England offense.
No.
I probably will not. No.
Interesting. We got a comment here from Will. Chargers going to be the chalk D, rookie quarterback, short offseason, strong pass rush. I don't know about chalk, Will, but I could see them.
They're just without Derwin James.
Garnering some ownership. Yeah, James.
Yeah, it looks like they're top 3. I mean, they're third.
Ooh, Dolphins aren't chalk at min price. Let's go. I'm all in.
Dude, I don't feel like ever on, unless it's on a short slate, that a min price D is really chalk. Except for when they were under 2, when they were starting to get under 2K, and there was like somebody was 1,200. I remember last year.
You just throw them in.
Jets, I think Jets were 1,200.
Defensive touchdowns are just so random. It's like, just give me a team that can generate a little bit of a pass rush, and maybe I luck into a sack fumble. Miami 3.8%. That is
print money.
Versus Cam Newton, who hasn't played in over a year, and they have no running back. And Miami made all these upgrades, and they're min price. Lock button play of the league. Miami Dolphins defense.
All right, live button play for Maddie and Kev is Dolphins D. I'm probably going to get some Colts exposure there, but
I like the Colts D, the personnel they have. I like Colts D.
Yeah, I mean, they've done some things all around, and if Phillip Rivers turns the ball over, they're dealing with short fields. Who's to say? But that's where I usually look at the middle and kind of start there. But yeah, if I need some salary relief, then I might be straddling along with you guys.
I think Pat's defense as the with the highest ownership, I think is somewhat ridiculous to me.
Yeah, because they're without all their main guys, or not all, but most of their main guys, right?
Yeah, and they're missing some of them. Yeah, they lost obviously Carson Noy. Hightower had opted out, which is a huge blow to their defense.
It's just incredible how much people, I feel like, base things off of the year pass so much, because you look at the game logs for the Patriots D, and when we were getting those 20-point games, 30-point games out of them, like people are like, oh yeah, like let's play the Pats going against the Miami Dolphins team, where the Pats traditionally have won against them, but there's so many things that factor in now with the scenery changing completely without Tom Brady being there and their defense being a shell of itself. So that could be leading to that ownership, though. I feel like game log watching.
I don't know. Just lock them in.
Dolphins D it is. All right, let's build this team real quick. I got it loaded up in the Millie tournament, but I think I'm going to start entering these lines into a single entry. So I'll be sure I'll tweet it out from the Degenation Pod Twitter account, the tournament entry, or the tournament that we end up in with this entry, and we'll let you guys know. But let's build it right here on the Millie site as we have it pulled up here. And Maddie, let's start with you, man, and why don't you let us know how this build is going to go?
Lock of the week, Dolphins D. You guys can have you guys can start us off with how we take. I'll give you some salary relief.
2KD is in there.
Yep.
Kev, you want next, or you want me to go?
Go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna I'm gonna go with Josh Jacobs. We all liked him, and I like that price tag on him. Still Josh Jacobs in there, 6,800.
Well, let's go with Miles Sanders then. Or no. It's gonna get weird. Let's go Gibson.
All right, here we go. Gibson and Jacobs with Dolphins D.
All right, we're going Matt Stafford.
Damn.
I have so much money left over. Or so much money to play with.
If we play Stafford, go ahead, Kev. No, it's me. I'm gonna say Gallaudet. Yeah. If we're playing Stafford, I'm gonna say Gallaudet. We got to get points somewhere.
All right. Well, let's just run it back with Allen Robinson then.
Oh shit, we did it.
Man, see, this is where builds are going to get interesting because there's like a lot of different ways you can go. And you're going to have to make a decision. Like you can pay up for George Kittle and then kind of pay down a little bit at your wide receiver and flex, or you can pay down at tight end, or you can go mid-range at tight end like Zach Ertz.
Yep.
And then afford more of builds are going to be – there's going to be a lot of 2v2, 3v3 decisions you're going to have to make this week.
Yeah, but I can guarantee you, like having this roster here, like even if you were to go like a Kittle, like the Stafford Gallaudet stack with Allen Robinson is very contrarian.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go. I definitely want a third running back. So let's go with y'all. Either Eckler or Kamara. What do y'all feel? One of those two.
I'd rather have Kamara, to be honest.
All right, yeah, I'm on Kamara this week. Let's go Kamara.
Kev, you got a wide receiver, a tight end that you like?
I don't know. I'm just waiting to see
55-50. Because
I'm waiting to see what's
I'm considering Andrews at 6K.
Oh, I can make that work.
Oh yeah, 51. That's light work there.
So yeah, we got Andrews. If we play Andrews, it's 51 for a wide receiver left.
That range is kind of gross.
Or if we go Hurst, we got 6,800 left.
Jeez.
What if we go Hurst, Kev?
What? Leave it, Mark Andrews. Let's just go Henry Ruggs.
Henry Ruggs, okay. So we got Andrews.
I mean, we could go to Deshaun Jackson, but we know that's how chalky he's gonna be. So I don't want to do that. And then, you don't want
to play Marquise Brown with Mark Andrews and not have Lamar.
Right. We could go Greg Ward, which I like a lot, but I mean he's 4,200. That would leave quite a bit on the table, which would obviously open that up and be contrarian in its own right. But
Greg Ward and Kittle.
Can you get to that? Does that work?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Yeah. See, that's where I would go.
Oh, it's one. Oh shit.
It's 300 short.
300 short. I thought you could get to it.
You would need like a Paris Campbell against Jacksonville type.
Oh, we want to get Katran. Hold on, let me look here. I can get Katran.
Oh boy, he's at it. He's at it again.
Dante Pettis.
He's at it again. You want me to plug Kittle back in, Kev? You got some?
Ooh.
Oh God, I don't like where this is going, Ryan.
We get real wild here, boys.
Oh God.
Get Kittle in at 7,200, and it leaves me just enough so we'll have nothing left on the table. We're gonna go with Joe Reed.
What?
Is that like a generated creative player?
No. Obviously have to figure out if Mike Williams is going to be back, but if he's not, like, he's supposed to be the starting wide receiver in the Mike Williams role.
Oh, my God.
Jesus, Joe Reed.
I'm telling you, Joe Reed is bald this offseason through camp, and the dude is super athletic. Like, he ran, let me bring it up. I'm telling you, low-key, he is...
We're going to start the pod next week with a Joe Reed tribute if he goes out and gets a touchdown.
So Joe Reed has 74th percentile 40-yard dash, ran a 4.47, 112.2 speed score, which is 94th percentile. He has 126.1, 75th percentile burst score. He's a rookie, 5th-round pick out of Virginia, 6'1", 225. So...
Dude, and Maddie, what's crazy about it is, as we laugh, and I was laughing there with you, is like a 3,900 receiver doesn't need to do much to pay off when you're looking at this team. Like, if Kittle goes out and does what he's supposed to do, if we get Kamara, if we do hit on that Detroit-Chicago stack, like, Joe Reed could go out there and get 10 points.
But see, at that point, I'd rather take somebody like Goddard, just for how I would approach my build. Like, if I was like, okay, 2v2, give me Goddard and a 7K receiver like Mike Evans.
Well, I would too. I'm not saying. I was just saying if you were looking to get the I think Joe Reed.
I don't mind. Well, hold on. We could fit Kittle or Goddard.
Like, I'm just kind of talking out loud. Like, if I was like assessing this team and kind of finalizing it as one of my own, I would say, okay, give me the upside at the wide receiver from a high price wide receiver, and I'll take my floor instead of a 3,900 Joe Reed. I'll take my floor from a 4,100 Goddard. I'm pulling up the Chargers depth chart though. Not that really matters, but yeah, I mean, the Chargers literally only have a handful of guys.
The only thing is I don't like having to root for Tyrod.
Dude, now that I think about it, like, how heavily are they going to rely on Eckler?
Dude, I mean, a lot.
Right? They have to. If Williams is out, right? And, like, it's not like Cincinnati's going to be able to push back on them.
All right.
Sorry, are you locking in Goddard?
Sorry,
I went back to Reed. I went back to Reed Kittle.
Yeah, okay. Go Reed Kittle.
I'm gonna go. Here we go. We're gonna go Reed Kittle on this team that consists of Matthew Stafford, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, Kenny Gallaudet, Allen Robinson, Joe Reed, George Kittle, Evan Kamara in the flex, and then Dolphins D. If we get word that Mike Williams is going to be playing, or if we somehow change this team or change around this team, I will release an update on the Degenation Pod Twitter on Sunday morning with the final roster. I'll do so anyway. But at 9 a.m., DJ Nation Twitter, we will tweet out what our final roster is, what tournament we are in for a single entry with this lineup finalized and set. But for right now, that is the squad. And for right now, that is your week 1 DJ Nation podcast for the 2020 season in the books. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Shout out to Maddie Moles Pod and shout out to Will coming in here and, interacting with us. I appreciate that. As I said before at the start of the pod, you guys rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts, or if you send a screenshot to me on Twitter, Ryan__W, that you rated it on another podcasting software, I will Venmo or PayPal the first 10 people to do so to me $5, so you guys can play for that on any side of your choosing, whatever have you. First 10 people to do that, 5-star rating. Get a review in, send me a screenshot. Let's go. Let's get it. We got to start the season off strong. The DJ Nation Pod is back, baby. Thank you guys so much for joining in with us. We want to hear from you guys. We want to see those screenshots. We want to talk to you guys, interact with you. YouTube channel, you guys see it right there at the bottom screen. If you're watching live, go subscribe to the channel. If not, we're going to catch you guys on the airwaves on any of your podcasting software. We love interacting with you guys. Get into Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. Get in the Slack. We got the Slack chat that's going to be starting up strong. You can find details about that too on TFA, on our Fantasy Authority Twitter handle as well. You guys got any last words before I sign off?
No,
I did not
excited
think we were going to be
one.
getting on Joe Reed this week, but here we are.
We are not on Joe Reed, for the record.
Joe Reed placeholder lineup. Joe Reed placeholder lineup as we get things set and dive in.
I'm waiting for him go like 5 for 70 and a touchdown, and I'm just gonna show up to the next week just like this. I'm not gonna say a word. I'm just
with no Mike Williams, though. That caveat in there. With no Mike Williams, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Kevin going to be crickets. Woo! That's an hour and 50 minutes. That's going to do it for us here at the DJ Nation Pod. Signing off for Kevin Steele at Fantasy Wrath 13 is where you can find him on Twitter, and Maddie Dixon at Maddie DFS on Twitter. I am Ryan Alexander_W on Twitter, and we'll catch you guys next week for week 2 of the DJ Nation podcast. But until then, get that money, y'all. Week 1, football's back. We here. Peace out.